At dusk, beneath the dimming light of the sky, an old woman sat alone at a wooden table in the corner of a village tea house. Her hands, gnarled and weathered from years of labor, rested gently on a steaming cup of tea. The scent of smoldering wood filled the air, mingling with the earthy aroma of rice that had been cooked hours earlier. Outside, the first stars began to twinkle in the gathering darkness. Inside, the tea house was quiet except for the soft murmur of patrons settling into their cups and conversation. The old woman's gaze wandered past an elderly couple sharing a meal at a nearby table, her eyes lingering on the man who had entered the tea house just then. He was younger, though his shoulders were burdened with a heaviness that seemed to weigh him down as he approached the counter. His face, marked by worry lines and fatigue, met hers across the room. She watched him order tea, nodding to no one in particular before making his way over to an empty seat near her. Their eyes met briefly before she turned away, bringing the cup of tea to her lips. The steam rose like a bridge between them, but never did they speak or acknowledge each other's presence directly until he shifted uncomfortably and glanced again at the woman beside him. She set down her cup and looked up at him with an expression hard to read, neither cold nor warm, simply open. In that moment he understood what she was silently offering, a space where nothing needed saying aloud. He seemed to consider it deeply before nodding slightly, as if in agreement or perhaps just accepting the quiet between them. For some time they sat together, drinking their tea without any words exchanged beyond ordering and pouring water for refills. The evening deepened outside, and shadows crept across the wooden floors inside. Patrons trickled out one by one until only the old woman and he remained. She sipped her cooling tea slowly now, watching him intently as if noting every movement but never intruding upon his thoughts. Eventually, she set aside her cup once more, this time signaling toward a small chest beneath the table where extra napkins were kept. He followed her gesture, reaching into his own bag and pulling out an old photograph folded nearly to pieces. Carefully placing it beside hers on the tabletop, he turned back to drinking his tea. Minutes ticked by in silence, punctuated only by the occasional clink of cups being placed down gently. Then came a knock at the door, a child's voice calling for its mother from outside. Both looked up simultaneously but did not rise or hurry towards the sound. Instead, the old woman leaned forward slightly and held out her hand, palm upward toward him. He stared at it for several seconds before understanding dawned in his eyes, and he too placed a wrinkled hand atop hers where they rested lightly on the wooden surface between them. The door opened then, admitting another day's end with its familiar hum of nighttime activities beginning to stir around them, both still sitting there side by side. His gaze lifted away from their joined hands slowly, almost reluctantly. She offered him a brief nod, a small smile playing at her lips, before rising gracefully and making her way out into the night without ever turning back or glancing over her shoulder. As she disappeared through the door, he lingered for just another moment longer, then followed suit. Outside, the village street was filled with soft voices drifting from windows open to catch the breeze. Stars above shone brightly now against the black expanse of sky, and in one particular home near the river, a mother tucked her child into bed under the same blanket they had shared earlier that day before leaving for work, then returning again. The door closed quietly behind him after he stepped out onto the wooden bridge spanning the small stream at its edge. The gentle rush of water beneath him accompanied his silent passage towards home, each step steady and certain as if guided by an unseen current carrying both forward into what lay ahead together yet alone.
You're listening to the Empty Teahouse. The cup still held a little warmth when he picked it up. In the quiet alley between two clay walls, Oldley sat against the east wall every morning.
In the quiet alley between two clay walls, Oldley sat against the east wall every morning. He was a tailor by trade but had taken to this spot as his chosen place for observing the passage of time and the changes in the world around him. The alley wasn't much to look at, a narrow path connecting a marketplace street to an old temple behind which lived several families, but it was here that Oldley found solace. One morning, while he sat under the weak winter sun, he noticed a young woman carrying a basket of fish through the snow. She moved with quiet determination and her footsteps were soft against the frozen ground. The basket clinked as she walked past him, and then disappeared around the corner behind the temple walls. Curiosity piqued, Oldley decided to follow her. He found her in an open courtyard where a single persimmon tree stood, its bare branches reaching towards the sky. She was kneeling beside a small pond, gently setting down fish one by one. As each fish slid into the water, it flopped once before settling still. The woman watched them with an intensity that spoke of more than mere pity for their fate. There seemed to be something deeper at play. Oldley stood for some time without making his presence known, absorbing the quietude of the scene. The world around him had slowed down as he observed this ritual. After a while, she noticed him and offered a slight nod in greeting. There was no resentment or discomfort on her face, only acceptance. "Are you here to witness it?" she asked softly, glancing back at the pond where fish now floated motionless, some sinking beneath the surface. Oldley shook his head. "No," he replied just as quietly. "I'm here because I saw what you did and wanted to know why." The woman paused for a moment before responding. "For them," she said simply. "And for me." "Does it bring you peace?" Oldley asked, unsure of where this conversation would lead but feeling drawn to her. She looked at him then, meeting his gaze without flinching. There was a depth in her eyes that spoke volumes about the quiet strength within her. She smiled faintly before turning back to the pond and placing another fish into the water. This one swam briefly before falling still, a last struggle for life before submission. "Sometimes," she said, "it's not about what we do but how we see it." Oldley nodded thoughtfully as he watched this final gesture. The woman rose from her knees and turned to leave. As she passed him once more in the direction of home, Oldley felt a subtle shift within himself, a change that was less definable than describable. He remained seated by the alley wall until the light began to fade into dusk. When he finally stood up, his steps were lighter and his demeanor calmer. In the stillness of the setting sun, the sound of a door closing quietly behind her home marked the end of their brief encounter.
The lantern flame swayed once, then steadied again. The wooden bridge over the small stream was slick with morning dew when Hannah stepped onto it.
The wooden bridge over the small stream was slick with morning dew when Hannah stepped onto it. She wore her usual apron over a faded kimono that had seen many summers and winters, yet still clung to its colors as if they were promises never broken. Hannah crossed slowly, balancing the basket of herbs she'd gathered from fields beyond the village walls. Each step was deliberate, feet barely skidding on the wet wood as the sun peeked over distant hills in a tentative yellow light. On the far side, Hannah turned towards the tea house where she would spend her mornings steeping tea and listening to stories of the town's goings-on. Yet something caught her attention, a figure sitting alone at an outdoor table near the bridge's edge, watching the water flow beneath him with a calm expression. As Hannah approached, she saw it was Toshio, who had left the village years ago for work in the city but returned several months back looking different, quieter somehow. Now he sat here each morning as if guarding the stream or simply enjoying its company. Hannah greeted him softly, placing her basket next to his table before taking a seat across from him. "Good morning, Toshio," she said, noting how the sunlight glinted off water droplets still clinging to his hair. Toshio nodded without looking up but then met her eyes after a moment's pause. "Morning, Hannah." They sat together quietly for some time. Their shared silence was comfortable and warm in the cool air of dawn. Occasionally Hannah would glance at Toshio with questions unsaid or perhaps already answered by his stillness. Finally, she reached into her basket and took out a small sprig of lavender, plucking off one tiny purple flower to place beside him on the table where it lay like a delicate star fallen from sky to earth. "For you," she murmured softly. Toshio's eyes softened as he picked up the flower between his fingers, turning it gently. He didn't speak but seemed to breathe in its essence deeply before setting it back down lightly beside him once more. Hannah stood then, collecting her basket. "I should be going," she said. He nodded and watched her walk away, the bridge creaking softly beneath her feet as she crossed over again into the village beyond. The stream continued to flow steadily under both of them, indifferent yet comforting in its constancy. As Hannah moved out of sight towards the tea house, Toshio's gaze lingered on the spot where she had been standing only moments before. A small ripple danced across the surface of the water near his feet, no more than a whisper of motion, and then it was gone as if nothing ever stirred there at all.
A faint breeze stirred the surface of the stream, causing tiny ripples to dance around Toshio's reflection. Late autumn's chill hung heavy in the air as Ma Lin leaned against the cracked wall of her weaver's shop.
Late autumn's chill hung heavy in the air as Ma Lin leaned against the cracked wall of her weaver's shop. The sky was overcast, and a light rain had just ceased its fall. Through the thin wooden planks that made up the back porch, she could hear the rustling of leaves that had already begun their descent to the ground. Across from Ma Lin sat Wei, an old man who passed this way often on his long walks through the countryside. He always greeted her with a nod and a smile, pausing for what felt like just a moment too long before moving on. Today, however, he stayed longer than usual. Wei picked up one of the loom's discarded spools from the ground and began to study it closely, his fingers tracing over its spun thread. Ma Lin watched him from across the porch. She had noticed this ritual before, but never asked why he did it. After several minutes of silent contemplation, Wei glanced towards Ma Lin. "This," he said, holding up the spool by the handle, "has a story." Ma Lin smiled softly and nodded without speaking. She understood that her work here, like his journeying there, had its own quiet tales to tell. They both returned their gaze to the rain-soaked courtyard outside. From behind them came a soft clatter. Wei's wife entered with 2 cups of hot tea, setting them down gently on an old oak table between Ma Lin and Wei. The steam curled upwards as if trying to break through the gray clouds above them. Wei took his cup in hand, but didn't drink right away. Instead, he looked back out into the courtyard where persimmon leaves now lay scattered like tiny orange stars beneath their feet. "Every day," he said simply, "is a different pattern." Ma Lin raised an eyebrow and gave him a questioning look. Wei offered her a cup. She accepted it with both hands, feeling its warmth spread across her palms. The silence between them was comfortable now. Ma Lin thought about the threads in front of her, so many stories interwoven into each length of cloth. It made her feel connected to every person who had ever needed something from that very cloth. Wei spoke again after some time. "Do you remember the first day I walked this path?" He asked it as if he already knew she would, and indeed she did recall clearly how awkwardly they'd met then compared to their easy rapport now. Ma Lin chuckled. "I do," she replied. "You looked lost." Wei laughed too, though quietly. "And you?" But just then came the sound of small footsteps on the porch's planks. It was Li Mei, Wei's granddaughter, who had come from school early for a visit. She appeared holding flowers she'd picked along her walk home. "Grandpa," she said cheerfully as she approached him and Ma Lin, "look what I found." Wei leaned down to greet his granddaughter, while Ma Lin watched them with fondness in her eyes. The scene reminded her of simpler times, of childhood wonder that could still exist even when wrapped tightly in adult responsibilities and duties. Li Mei handed Wei the flowers before hugging both him and Ma Lin briefly. After a few moments, she went back outside to explore more freely, leaving behind the quiet aura of shared warmth between them on the porch. As Li Mei disappeared from view, Wei and Ma Lin exchanged smiles tinged with bittersweet memories. In this small moment, They seemed closer than ever, connected by threads both visible and invisible. Wei lifted his cup again and sipped slowly while looking out into the courtyard. Every day, he repeated softly to himself, as if trying to hold on to something fleeting yet eternal at once. Ma Lin followed suit with her own tea. Its warmth lingered inside her long after she swallowed. The world around them continued its slow, steady dance, unchanged and changing all at once. As the afternoon light began to wane outside their wooden enclosure, Wei rose from his seat and patted Ma Lin's shoulder gently before leaving for home. Ma Lin watched him go until he turned a corner out of sight. Then she returned her gaze toward the courtyard where fallen leaves continued their gentle descent onto the ground below. Inside, on the old oak table next to the now empty teacups, lay one last orange petal, a relic from autumn's passing and life's ongoing cycle of becoming.
The last petal drifted down, landing softly where Ma Lin's eyes lingered longest. In the soft glow of twilight, Lu sat by his wooden workbench in the candlemaker's workshop.
In the soft glow of twilight, Lu sat by his wooden workbench in the candlemaker's workshop. The scent of beeswax and smoke filled the air as he carefully trimmed each wick before dipping it into a large vat of melted wax. His movements were slow and deliberate, practiced over years of making candles for the village. A light knock on the door brought Lu out of his rhythm. He looked up to see Ling, a child carrying a small basket that seemed too big for her hands. She shuffled in with a hesitant smile and set the basket down beside him without a word. "You're here for more wax, aren't you?" Lu asked, already reaching for a wrapped candle from beneath the workbench. "No," she said softly, looking at her feet. "I wanted to see how you made them." Lu paused, setting aside the candle and wiping his hands on a rag before motioning for Ling to sit beside him. She moved slowly, settling onto a low stool across from him with her basket between them. "Why do you make so many candles?" she asked, leaning forward slightly, eyes wide with curiosity. "For people," Lu said simply, picking up another candle and holding it out to show how the wax had cooled and hardened around the wick. "For light." Ling nodded, reaching out a small hand to touch the end of the candle he held, her fingers leaving little marks in the soft beeswax. "Are you going to make one?" Lu asked after a moment, noticing the basket between them. Inside lay a few twigs and a spool of thin thread. Ling's eyes flickered up at him with surprise and a shy smile spread across her face. "I wanted to try." Together they laid out the materials from the basket on Lu's bench, arranging twigs side by side, and winding the thread carefully around them like a spine for the candle. Lu showed Ling how to dip the wick into the wax, explaining each step quietly as he guided her hands through the process. They worked in silence for a time, Ling concentrating intently while Lu watched with a tender expression. Each dip was patient, and the wax coated thickly around the twigs until the candle took shape beneath their joined efforts. When it cooled enough to hold its form, they stood back to look at what they had made together. The candle shone gently in the fading light of evening, a warm yellow hue that flickered slightly from their breaths. "I think you should take this home," Lu said quietly, handing her the completed candle with a small smile. Ling's face lit up as she accepted it, holding it close to admire how smoothly they had worked together. She stood up, placing the candle carefully in her basket and straightening it so that it would not be damaged. "Thank you, Mr. Lu," Ling said softly before turning to leave. At the door she paused, looking back at him with a curious gaze. "Will you come see my candles sometime?" Lu nodded slowly, smiling as he watched her exit his workshop. She walked out into the growing darkness carrying something small but precious in her arms, while Lu returned to his workbench and continued making light for others, his hands steady and sure once more.
Stay with the candle's soft glow as it casts a brief light on her path into the night. We close the door now. Until tomorrow.